Hello, and welcome to Behind Closed Doors, what it really takes to hit seven figures, or your first customer, or your first six-figure month, year, six-figure month, that would be amazing, six-figure year in business. I am Kendrick Shope, and today we have the amazing Christine Tremoulet with you and with us. And let me tell you something, you are in for a treat. Christine is the clarity and confidence catalyst that helps you build your business brilliantly. Not only is Christine your go-to lady for confidence, clarity, and building your business brilliantly, she also named WordPress. Oh yes, that is one of Christine's many claims to fame. She named WordPress. Seriously, she's famous, and she's here today to talk with us about what you can do to build your business brilliantly. Thank you so much for being here, Christine.
Thank you for having me.
It is our honor. So, Christine, I want you to tell people you've done, so it's funny because Christine and I were talking off air about what we wanted to focus on because Christine's done so much, so well. Christine has a book called Blogging Brilliantly, right? Let's see.
Blogging Brilliantly.
Yeah,
I'll hold it still.
There you go. Best-selling book. She has a course. What's your course called?
Blogging Brilliantly is the one that's currently out, and there will be more coming as part of the whole Business Brilliantly series.
Fantastic. So Business Brilliantly, let's just get it straight, is the umbrella which all of everything else falls under. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Christine's also a branding expert. She is what I would call a PR guru, so she knows about how to use social media to get customers. She's a person to know. She's also a fan-freaking-tastic photographer and spent some time as a boudoir photographer as well as photographing weddings. She is a jack of many and all trades. So Christine Tremoulet, check her out. Now, let's jump in, Christine. Tell me what you love about this work. You really are. You're so wonderful at a lot of things. What do you love about teaching people to run a business brilliantly?
You know, what's really funny is I feel like I've traveled this big circle route. 16 years ago, I was working as a web consultant. That was actually my big move into the internet world. And it was at the same time that I started blogging. So I've blogged for 16 years. And I worked with Fortune 500 companies and talking with them about what was their goals with their internet site. You know, people were just starting to build websites. Most people hadn't even heard of a blog yet. That was still a few years away. And I went through this whole path of, I did consulting with large companies. I eventually, I owned my own hosting company, which focused on bloggers. I lived my dream. I dreamed for a long time of being a professional photographer. And back when I was in high school and college, you were a professional photographer, just like you worked for a newspaper and that was it. That was sort of the only option. And once digital came along, that definitely changed things in the photography world. So I went for it. I'm like, you know, I have a dream. I want to be a professional photographer. And I was fully booked my first year in business. And the reason why was because I was blogging and I was sharing who I was authentically with the world. I was connecting with people on this real, genuine level. And, you know, time keeps moving on. And I realized in 2010 or so that I really wanted to actually coach people. That my favorite part of being a professional photographer was talking with other business owners about how to run their business. And in my spare time, where a lot of photographers in their spare time are trying to figure out like the latest ways to use Flash or things like that, in my spare time, how can I market even better? How can I brand myself better? How can I stand out in a crowded market? That's how I first found you, was like my insatiable desire to learn everything about marketing, branding, business, selling. In my spare time, that's what I sit around and read about and talk about. So eventually I was like, okay, maybe I should I did it. I lived the dream. A few weeks ago, I actually added up the numbers because I never added up the numbers over my whole career. I had over $1 million career as a professional photographer. When I sat down and added up the numbers of 7 years of being in business, I made well over $1 million over those years, which kind of puts, kind of dispels that whole starving artist idea. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm attracted to other entrepreneurs about is busting through these myths. I have a series on my blog that I call the bullshit stories I tell myself. Pardon my language.
Oh, please. No apology, no pardon needed.
So, but it's the bullshit stories I tell myself. If I'm going to be an artist, I can't, nobody will pay me. And I'm constantly working with people that we tell ourselves these things over and over and over again. Nobody in my market will pay me that. Oh, that works for you, but it won't work here. Yeah. And now, as blogs, blogs are 16, 17 years old now in existence. A lot of people fight them. They're like, oh, well, why should I blog? What am I going to talk about? Who's going to show up and read it? Why would anyone listen? I can just post it on Facebook. Let's just stick it on Facebook. That's so much easier. And the people I tend to spend the most time with, they don't necessarily want to change the world as a whole, but they want to change the world for the people that they work with. They want to change people's lives. They want to have a big impact. And I want to help them find how to do that. And I want to help people. The internet doesn't scare me, obviously, but I know it's really scary for different reasons for people, not just, it's not just technology, but putting yourself out there and talking about yourself is also really scary. And I love helping people with that.
I love that you help people with that. It's funny because, not funny, but it's interesting because I didn't know people like that existed. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I didn't know that because I struggle with a lot of things. But putting myself out there isn't one of them.
Right.
Necessarily. I mean, I can think of some circumstances where it might be, but like when people were like, I have this fear about putting myself out there. I'm like, I'm not being a smart ass. I don't understand what you mean.
Well, and I had my very first podcast, again, jack of all trades. I've done so many things over the years. I had my very first podcast back in 2005. I had a podcast about knitting, of all things, like knitting. And people are like, oh, I can't podcast about this. No one will be interested. I had a podcast about knitting when it was like iPhones didn't exist yet. It was really hard to listen to a podcast, actually. And I had thousands of people listening to me talk for an hour about knitting and what I was working on and what were the latest cool projects to start about knitting. So, you and I are kindred spirits in a lot of ways. And that's one of them is because it's hard for me to, it was hard. I've spent a lot of time working on this and on understanding why it's hard for other people.
Yeah.
I thought when I stopped working as a photographer and moved into doing coaching that these two things weren't related at all. But what I realized is I learned some really great critical skills as a boudoir photographer. And for people out there that don't know what a boudoir photographer is, people used to come to my studio and within an hour of meeting me, strip down to their underwear and let me photograph them in their underwear. I have to know how to get people to a place where they are willing to be vulnerable really fast.
That's one of the things I love about you, Christine, is because you sum up this story that is my story as well. As you said, we're kindred spirits, but every little step you took gave you a piece of the pie, a piece of experience to build to create this next step. you know, and you were massively successful as a photographer. You're massively successful here, but you continue to challenge yourself and grow, and every little step allows you some level of experience, some level of expertise that allows you to be better at what you do. And I don't know, I have no idea. You confidently say I have no idea what the future looks like for you, but I know that what you're doing now is a step in the process.
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask you a different question. I'm gonna turn things personal here for a minute, because you've got a tagline that you're playing with and that you're doing stuff with called "Your heart is dying for you to listen to it." Did I say it right?
You did.
Okay, your heart is dying for you to listen to it. What's it mean? What's it about?
So on a surface level, I think, I mentioned being a web consultant 16 years ago and working with these Fortune 500 companies. And 16 years ago, if you were online, the miracle of the internet that I constantly told clients this, the miracle of the internet was you could have a business where you only had 5 employees, that you could make your business look like you had 100 employees. It was really cool how you could use the internet to do this. What's happened in the past 16 years because of social media is we've actually completely flipped this on its head. And companies that have thousands of employees want to look like a company of 1.
Yep.
So those of us that are in fact companies of 1 or 5 are at an advantage. We can go for our passion. We can infuse our passion and our heart's mission and everything else into our business and stand out. I often tell the story about how just a year ago, I flew somewhere on United Airlines. And, a great example of how much this has changed in industry. I flew on United Airlines and I had paid for the upgrade to have the seats. I wasn't in first class, but like the seats where you have extra leg room and stuff, the fancy seats. Mm-hmm. So I paid for that upgrade because I, as a photographer, I wanted to be ahead of the wing so I could take pictures when we flew over the mountains. These are the things I think about when I fly. So I wanted a window seat before the wing. Well, I got on the plane and I didn't have a window on my row. Like literally there is no window at my seat. I also get a little motion sick. And so the window helps me ground myself, helps keep me from being motion sick. So I took a selfie, I took a selfie and I made the what's up with this United face? And I tweeted it, posted it to Twitter, @United, what's up with this? Where's my window? And I posted the photo. Because I honestly expected United to respond.
Yeah.
And we would have never done that 15 years ago.
No.
But now I post to Twitter and United, sure enough, by the time I flew from Houston to San Francisco, I landed and United had sent me an apology on Twitter, had asked me to send a direct message, what was my flight number, and they actually gave me a partial refund because I didn't have, they apologized, they're like, our planes have been reorganized and everything else. So on the surface, we have reached this new age where for so many of us, we can build businesses around what we're passionate about. We were never taught how. So that's like where you and I come in. We want to teach people how to do it because we were never taught this in school. But on a deeper level, and really where my own passion in this lies is speaking actually of that flight a year ago, it was sort of the start of a medical journey for me. What I didn't know was happening at the time, just to sum it up, was I was having really bad angina, which basically means like if I tried to walk up even a mild incline, I felt like I was having a heart attack. I felt like I was going to die. And the first few times I was like, hey, husband, I feel like I'm going to die. I think he thought I was just, sort of being a drama queen, but I wasn't. I actually felt like I was going to die. And I suffered over a year with this just ongoing chest pains. We thought it was asthma. We were checking everything else. My blood pressure was going up. And as a business owner, I was like, well, I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time for this. I've got business to run. I've got things to do. I don't have time. So while I did go to the doctor, I still, I rearranged some doctor's appointments here and there. And, I still got it taken care of, but a bit begrudgingly. Well, finally, last October, I flew 6 times in 6 weeks. So I did a lot of travel over 6 weeks. And when I showed up at my doctor's appointment in the first week of November, I told her, I said, I decided it was time to stop being the martyr. And I actually asked for wheelchair assistance at the airport because I couldn't walk through the airports anymore.
Wow.
It hurt to, I couldn't carry a bag. So then I tried using a rolling bag and the rolling bag didn't help. I just had to ask for a wheelchair. Which, by the way, when you look like this and you look perfectly healthy, it's really hard to ask for a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And I think this is so symbolic of our businesses. It's really hard to ask for help when you look like you have it all together.
Yep.
And so but I did it. I'm like, it's either this or I'm going to end up passed out on the floor. So when I mentioned that to her, though, it sort of snapped my cardiologist to attention that I had asked for a wheelchair. And this was on a Tuesday. And she said, I want you in the heart cath lab by Friday. And so sure enough, Thursday they called me and they set it up. They took me to the cath lab and I had 100% blockage in the LAD artery, which is what's known as the widowmaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it is the artery where a lot of people's heart attacks happen.
Yep.
And things I never knew. Like if you have a sudden 100% blockage, that's a heart attack. Now mine wasn't sudden, but mine was so massive they actually had to put in multiple stents to open that blockage up. I had a second blockage in the middle artery and a smaller third blockage in the right artery. And so they took care of those in November. And fast forward to March of this year, I was, business was full steam ahead. I wrote the book and was starting to do my book launch and everything else. But I was starting to notice I was really tired all the time. And again, I'm blaming it on my business. I'm working so much. And then I took a flight again and I live in Houston, Texas. It's flat. So I went to Washington, and Washington has hills. And once again, I can't walk up a hill. I can't walk through the airport. I go back to my cardiologist and he's like, your stress test is normal. I don't know what's going on. Like, we have to go back to the cath lab. And in 6 months, I had developed 3 more blockages.
Wow.
And so just last week, as a matter of fact, a week ago today, by the way, fortunately, having stents put in your heart is a pretty easy recovery process. And so I'm 100% on the mend. I've been back at work a few days now. So that's like when we are off camera thing, you were like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. Really, I am fine.
Yeah.
But they added 3 more stents. And at this point in time, my doctor hasn't said this to me, but I'm pretty sure if I end up with any more blockages in the LAD, I'll end up having to have a heart bypass. This is not something that's supposed to happen in your mid-40s.
Yeah.
But what I feel almost like, so I often find myself saying, I'm not woo-woo, but.
Yeah.
I'm not woo-woo, but
yes.
What I feel myself really called to talk about is the fact that what we as women don't realize, heart disease is the #1 killer of women, especially women in their 40s. It is, not only is it the #1 killer of women, it is more than the next 7 causes of death combined.
Yeah.
But we give all the press to breast cancer.
Yeah.
And a little press to like ovarian cancer, but most of the press goes to breast cancer. But for those of you listening today, your heart is actually probably more likely to kill you.
Yeah.
And if you have heart disease, don't ignore it. And it wasn't even a matter that I was ignoring it. Matter of fact, I changed my diet 4 years ago, lost 40 pounds, completely changed how I ate, cut wheat out of my diet, gluten. I've been gluten-free for 4.5 years. And for the first time in my life, my blood pressure was normal.
Yeah.
Until the angina started.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and I know you know this, but you can have these genetic markers.
Which is actually my next test coming up, is having more genetic testing done.
I've had that done. It's fascinating. But there's a lipo-A or lipo-A something, and if you have it twice, like if you have it once, you are whatever percentage more likely to have heart disease. If you have it twice, you kind of yeah, you pay attention. I have it twice, by the way. That's how I know.
Yeah. But, and mine's all, or I shouldn't say all. Like much of America, I need to lose weight. Like pretty much everybody out there, who do you talk to that doesn't say that they need to lose weight? I wouldn't say that I need to eat better, because I've already been doing.
Like you made all the changes though, right?
Yeah, I did all the right thing. Matter of fact, I had in September, they had done like the cholesterol test and everything else in September as just part of this. My doctor was very proactively trying to figure out what was going on with me, and my cholesterol was normal. Like all my readings were normal, but and again, this goes back to our businesses. We don't fight for things sometimes that we really do need to fight for. We don't stand up and say, I need someone to hear me. I need someone to listen to me, because and especially I think women that are in their 30s to their 50s and older, I think the coming up generation, the millennials, have it slightly better. Like they have actually been told to speak up for themselves. Whereas people in their 30s, we were told to nice girls don't do that.
Yes.
And which I think is where you and I are kindred spirits, because I think we were probably often rebelling against what the nice girls are supposed to do.
Yeah, you combine that with an upbringing in the South, and let me tell you something. Nice girls don't do that. Polite girls don't do that. That's not following your manners. I mean, you seriously can be head screwed. I love the South, but seriously, you can be screwed.
I moved to Texas when I was 15 years old. And I grew up just south of Chicago in Kankakee, Illinois. And in Kankakee, it was perfectly okay for me to call a boy. And I moved to Texas, and I called the only person I knew in my biology class to find out something about what they had done the semester before I moved here. And I got told the next few days at school, a nice girl does not call a boy. Yeah. What were you doing? And I was like, what kind of strange land have I moved to?
Seriously. Okay, Christine, so jack of all trades, I'm curious, if you had one piece of advice, and I ask everybody this question, one piece of advice to give children, so our daughters, I always reference Halliana, who is my 7-year-old daughter, but little girls everywhere. What would it be?
It would be follow your gut and speak up when you need to say something.
Love it. Next question. For everybody listening, my hunch is that the majority of people either run a business, have an interest in running a business, something along those lines. What would your advice for them be? Or would it differ? Would it not?
My piece of advice would be, there is a lot of power in your story, and your story is really at the heart of selling, and it's okay to sell yourself. It is okay. Matter of fact, it will already, by the time people are watching this, it will be live. I just recorded a podcast episode yesterday where I said, we all struggle with this concept of speaking up and telling people about our businesses. And I want to encourage people to maybe try reframing that. What if you work for a company that somebody else owned? And a requirement of your job was that you had to tell other people about the company. You're not necessarily in sales, and you're not the social media admin or anything. You know, you're not the social media manager. It's just part of your job. You have to tell people that the company exists. It would be so easy.
It would.
Because you're like, I work for this company and it's great and amazing. But where we all get so stuck on it is when we're talking about ourselves and we realize it. We're like, oh, well, I can't talk about the company because the company is me.
Yeah.
But, you know, if your job depended on it, you know, you work for someone else and your paycheck, like you don't get a paycheck if you don't do this one thing, you would go do it. Because you can't show up in the unemployment line and be like, hey, I lost my job. Why'd you lose your job? Well, because I didn't want to tell anybody about my company. The unemployment office is going to kick you to the curb and be like, go tell people that you have a business. You can't file for unemployment.
I love that reframe. I love that reframe.
But, you know, so talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah. So, Christine, where can people learn more about you and get your book?
So the book is available on Amazon, both in paperback format or on Kindle. It is not on Audible yet. Sorry, I still have to record it someday. That's a someday coming thing. I don't know if I can handle reading the whole thing out loud yet. My website is christinetremoulet.com.
We'll put that in the notes or in the page, actually.
And I realize that's a little bit hard to spell, especially if you're listening, you don't have, anything handy. So businessbrilliantly.com also takes you straight there.
There you go. And that's spoken like a true professional who knows how to get people to her website. Christine, thank you so much for being here. It is such a pleasure to have somebody as esteemed as you be here and talk to us about all the things that are going on in your world and also what it takes to hit seven figures multiple times in your business. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I believe in you and I believe in your business. You can do this. Now go do it.